What's up, guys? Doug Polk here, and today we're going to be taking a look at who are the top 10 no-limit cash game players in the world, ranked by how good they are. The ranking was done by Upswing Poker's newest coach, Andres Artinano, otherwise known as Educa Poker. Now, we actually launched his course today over on Upswing. It's the Elite Cash Game Mastery course, and it's over 30 hours of content breaking down how you should be playing no-limit cash games. The course costs $1,000, and if you buy before Saturday, you're also going to receive this OTB Crush the Baron course, where Educa is going to break down how OTB plays and how you can use that to try and improve your game. That course will be $500 moving forward after Friday, so if you're interested in checking out the course, this week's a good time to do it, and the link is in the description below. All right, let's go ahead and jump into who are the actually top 10 players in No Limit Hold'em. I want to welcome everyone to our video today. We are joined by the new Upswing Poker No Limit Cash Game Course coach, Educa Poker, otherwise known as his real name, Andres Artinano. I'm sure I butchered that, man, but welcome to the video today.
Thank you so much, Doug. I'm really happy to be here with you and joining the team. So, yeah, everything good.
Awesome. Yeah, we're excited for that too. And today we got a little treat for the viewers. Now, I'm no stranger to the power rankings. You know, I did one of mine for Heads Up Poker back in the day, kind of as a little bit of a way to like shit talk people into getting some action, but also just because I think it's kind of cool, at least for some people outside of maybe like the more in the know scene, to get like an idea of like what people that really know what they're talking about, who really know what's going on in the streets, to see like that insider knowledge of like who are the best players, because that's something that I think everyone in poker is at least a little bit curious about, right? Like who are the great players? Who do the best people think is the best? So today we're going to be going through or not our list, really your list, your top 10 six max list. Are you excited?
Yeah, of course. I think that it has been long due that we had a good six max no limit list power rankings. I think it's a bit harder than in Heads Up because there are many other factors, but still, I think we should have one for a long time, and we didn't have. So here I am to give you the names of who I think are the best. I think most of them, like most high stakes players, will usually agree on who I say who are the best. Of course, 2017, 2016 with cryptocurrency, there are many people who are retired, so it's not going to be as good as I'd like to, because people are not so much interested in battling anymore. But also the rate has impacted a lot. But still, some of the best, if not like the best, are still there. So let's go for them.
All right, sounds good. We got our list here, and let's jump into it. Let's go for who is your number 10 six max player.
Yeah, my number 10 is a long-time player. He's a Danish player, Henrik Hecklin. He's a very good player, very smart, aggressive player. He's tricky. He understands very well the game. I think he became much more top of the list, but basically he has been stepping out and he's not playing so much. And even if he's playing very low volume, I think he's still one of the best players. And if you put him playing, I think nobody wants him on the table, even if he's a bit rusty right now nowadays.
Yeah, you know, I've actually played a little with Hecklin. I think he moved over to 8-game somewhat in the last year or two. I think I played a little bit against him over there. And he's also been in the heads up streets. So this is definitely a guy that tries a lot of different game types out. Do you think that maybe that's helped him or hurt him?
Yeah, I mean, he loves poker, and it's easy to see when one guy is playing every kind of game. It's the kind of guys who really, really loves poker over the money. He really enjoys playing, learning. I remember he was playing every single game that he found. So I remember once I saw him in I think it was in Prague playing backgammon, and I said, "Wow, he likes games. He likes games."
If you're playing backgammon, you're definitely a grinder. But let's not spend too much time on number 10 here. Move on. Number 9.
Yeah, my number 9 is Fish 2013. If Hecklin has been there in the streets for a long time, Fish has been forever in the streets. He's a Belarusian guy. He plays very well. He struggled a bit in 2014, 2015 when he was readapting. He had been crashing for a long time. Then he readapted. And right now, I think he plays very well. he has lost a bit of interest in playing against regulars, I think. So he's not playing so much against regulars, but definitely the kind of guy who plays 6 max NL. He plays sit and goes, he plays MTTs, he plays live games, he plays online games. So very complete player. He's very good. And I think that even if he's not battling so much, he would be doing it really well in the games. A lot of
Yeah,
experience as well, which is very important.
Fish always struck me as a very thoughtful player. You know, you could tell that he was really trying to figure out what the best strategy is. There are people that play on the quicker side, and then there's Fish 2013. So,
Well, there is
so,
also
so
there's 26071985 was his name.
oh, tight
Uh,
man,
Tight
Christoph.
man. Yeah,
Yeah,
Christoph.
Christoph.
He's the bottom range.
Yeah,
On
he's
the
the,
no, I mean on the who places lower is Christoph, then Fish, and then all the other players.
yeah, totally agree. But very smart player. You know, I think I remember the time period we were talking about where he struggled a little bit when he was playing a lot of the three-handed games with for Haley, and then eventually once OTB got into the streets, and like you never want to be the third guy in the OTB game.
They were trying to protect the table. So basically, when Fish and for Haley were holding the lobby for a long time with Katia, so they were the three in the streets. They were top number one, two, and three, and then OTB comes. He's playing them all the day. So then they have to battle for a few. The longest battle I've ever seen is for a few years, and then OTB runs and. I mean, OTB wins the battle, so Fish lives, and this is pretty much how it happened.
A little evolution of the six max games. All right, moving on to number 8.
Number 8 for me is a player who many will not know so much, but I think he's very good. Is Masher Dog. Uh, it's not he's. I mean, he has pretty good results. He plays tough lineups. He doesn't play the toughest lineups, but he has a very well built game where you see he's very thoughtful. He has a lot of his game is made very smart game or very smart plays, and you see like he has not many leaks. So I think this is the kind of complete player that I really like. And if I have a squad, I would put him, of course, because I mean, it's the kind of player who is very complete. He's not two taller. He's not as a better player. He's not the red Bayron, but definitely he's a very good player, and he has been playing the toughest games in the world, 40K NL and all the games. So
Yeah, so
rank
I
number
when
eight.
I think of a player like I always pronounce it MMA Sherdog, but maybe it is Master Dog. I have no idea. I know so little about him. I think he's like one of those newer school guys.
Yeah,
Would you say he's like kind of more new school compared to maybe some of the other people on this list?
definitely, Doug. I think he came in 2014. I mean, he has been playing, I think, for a long time mid stakes, but then in 2014, 2015, he went up and he started playing high stakes, and is the kind of guy who could be battling 5K NL, 10K NL, not for a long time on a smarter way, perhaps. But I'm sure he has been consistently making money. So, yeah, he's from the newcomers, we can say. He's not from the old school.
Sounds
It's not.
good.
It's normal you don't know them.
Yeah, to be honest with you, like I couldn't tell you two things about this guy. That's why like I find it more interesting to see like the older players. I say older, but I mean like 2013, 2014. But I find it interesting to see the older players because I dip my toes in the six max waters, or maybe I've played a couple of these guys a little bit of heads up. So I do find it a little more interesting, those guys' stories, which brings us to number 7.
Yeah, number 7. I'm sure you will know him. For me, is Katya. Katya is Katya 18. He's as long as for me, it's as long as Fish 2013. They have been there forever. It's even a bit sharper than Fish. He might play on a bit more on the calling station side. He's more aggressive. He's more willing to battle. He plays for more hours. He has like more stamina. It's like Jim May perhaps is the max stamina in the world. Then Katya can be also very persistent. He plays a lot, and I think he has lost a bit his love for the game, so he doesn't play so much anymore. But definitely for me, he has been one of the toughest players ever in Six Max. He has been battling the biggest games in the world that has ever been. So and for a long time as well, he has a lot of experience. So definitely he's in my top 10 and not number 10 precisely.
Yeah, I think of him kind of more as like a classic high stakes nosebleed reg. I remember back when the 400, 800 games with Malaysia were going, he was in like all of those battling it out. The guy has been around for a long time. And this is something that we were talking about actually before the video, but he strikes me as a player who's very aware of like what's going on, very aware of like the problems that his strategy might have, and like trying to solve them or trying to figure out what you're doing. So, you know, I guess like one of the things that I like about his strategy is he seems a little more adaptive to the elements than maybe some of the people that I guess like some of the classic regs like either Fish or for Haley.
Yeah. Definitely, he's more on the flexible side. I think, especially like he plays very well against aggressive players. He's extremely good against aggressive players. He was playing pretty good against me. He was playing not so well, for example, against Red Baron. He was playing well against, let's say, um, he was playing well against Heckler, for example, in my opinion, because his style was good against people who were bluffing at some spots more than often than they should. So actually, I think he catches these kind of things very well, and I think that is one of his strength points. Is this one, like, there are some kind of players who are good, but they are on the weaker side, and there are players who can go to the war and they can bitter and they can play against anyone. So this is the kind of player. I
Yeah,
mean,
that
he can make you a very big call on a very big pot, even if the stake is too high, and he'll do it very well. So this is why I really like Katya when he plays. Even, for example, if he is not anymore, like, let's say, a top three as he was in 2012, 2011, 2013, he was top. Right now is next level, but you say in English tier two, right?
tier two, yeah, tier two.
Tier two.
So, you know, there's definitely, players have different strengths, and some players can just play like a good solid game for a very long period of time, but they're never quite like A plus sharp, right? Whereas
Yeah.
some players, when they're on point, they just play like you just can't beat them. They're just absolutely top notch. But then they have more fall off, or they can't play for a long time because poker is such a complex game. It takes so much to think about. There are always so many factors that can go into your decision making that
Hmm.
I think if you want to be a really successful online poker player, obviously it's great to play, as close to perfect poker as you can. But those skill sets of just being able to hang in there in battle and basically just always being solid, that's a valuable skill set. And I think of
Yeah.
Katya being someone that can just hang in there for a super long time, playing great poker.
Yeah, I also think this gives you a lot of experience, and also, for example, just to put an example, if Katya is in a $300,000 downswing, he will not care so much about it, and he will play his A game all the time. And if you go, for example, to a more newcomer, let's say, for example, Antoja, and he gets this kind of downswing, he will have to put much more in question his game, and it's normal. But I mean, like, Katya is this kind of guy that can go very long time through with a lot of self confidence, which I think is, for example, he was much better than me at this point, doing this kind of things, just to attack someone.
There you go. Already taking some shots at some people. By the
All right.
way, that's how brutal it is here today. If you're seventh best in the world, people are taking shots at you. All right, let's go ahead and move on to number 6.
Yeah, for me, the number six is the GTO machine, Obora. I think that probably, well, poker has become a game where solvers got into action. There is no way that people can stop them because people are playing from their homes. And Obora is one of these guys who, presumably, and there has been a lot of discussion, was helped at least in to take some decisions in real time, or he was heavily helped by software. He relied on software a lot to make his decisions. We don't know if it's in real time or outside from the tables. So I think overall, don't matter what they say, he plays very good poker. Especially his 300 is very solid, and I think that he's one of the strongest players in terms of unexploitability. He plays very well. He can, even if he's a, let's say, for example, he's heavily helped on the river, he makes smart plays, and these are not botty plays. So I can give him credit. He's playing very well. He's from the newcomers as well. For nosebleeds, and I think he will keep crushing for the next couple of years.
I think I've seen a few hands from Obora in like the high stakes threat on 2+2. And I have to say, I have seen some hands that did not look like a person played them. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah. There are some situations where human cannot bluff because most of them are related to bluffing, right, or to calling. Yeah, because if you see the showdown, it has to be with these two. So, but basically, it happens that some of the times, like in limit, people were complaining about people who were calling too precisely. So here, people are bluffing in some spots that human don't have bluffs because we are not able to build a range. And when you see the showdown, you say, "Huh, this is very weird," because it doesn't add almost EV, and he's making a very weird bluff. And also, you are already suspicious because you see that all his game is built through a software-ish like kind of software game. So yeah, of course, people can complain. But if I mean, like, still, I think that his overall game uh, is very good. He plays very good. He doesn't commit many mistakes. He even some of the times when he gets the human side, he makes very extreme plays. So at least we know that there is a human behind.
Well, I would certainly hope that there's a human behind, but this actually also kind of asks the greater question. Like, if you're seeing people get to this high of a stake, to where there's at least some, percent chance that this guy is using solvers in game, like, does that worry you? And also, like, what do you think the chance that he's doing that is if you had to ballpark it?
um, I I'm not so worried about solvers because I think that the best players in the world are not so solvers oriented. Truth tellers are solver oriented. Let's say, for example, um, I am not so solver oriented. I think most players who are playing the highest stakes in the world that they are battling every day, they are not so much solver oriented because there's one thing which is okay, you can get the theory and you can have it here, but then applicating it at all the decisions that I can bring to you. For example, when you were playing Libratus and you were changing the side things, Libratus was learning all the time the side things. But when you are playing against a player in real game and you put him in a tougher spot, probably he has not a solution. So then you are playing against a human again, and it happens a lot that there are so many situations that are so unique at six max that your opponent will not have a solution. And then, of course, you can exploit him a lot if he's just relying on his software ability.
Yeah, for sure.
So I'm not
This
so worried.
This is actually something that I went on the record talking about a year or two ago, where I felt like solvers were less good than people were making them out to be. And I think originally my statements made about solvers were a little too strong, but there still are constraints with solvers. You can only pick from a certain range of sizes. You have to be able to put in like, somewhat specific ranges or fairly specific
Mhm.
ranges to get like an answer. And then, of course, you also have to understand things like rake or the tendencies of your opponent, particularly when you're playing against weaker players. So, I do think that there are good things that you can learn from solvers. I'm not going to take away that from solvers. But at the same time, they're not solving for the answer to poker. They're solving for the answer given a set of constraints that aren't the exact same thing as poker. I actually had a conversation on the 2+2 forums where one of the creators of the solvers said, "Oh yeah, you think you can beat this solver? Well, how about we play a game where you're on the flop and like you can only choose certain sizes, and then we see who wins." And I'm like,
Yeah,
"You're gonna
this
beat
is
me in
not
that.
fun.
I know I would lose."
Yeah, it's like let's play the calculator with the calculator.
Yeah.
Who's going to win? No, I mean like solvers are really good. For example, for learning, you can learn a lot of them. But this one of the things that we speak in the course is like you cannot rely on softwares to improve as a poker player because there are a lot of things on the outside that you're going to lose, and you can learn a lot about how you build your ranges. For example, the morphology, how to bluff, some kinds about frequencies, but you will not learn as much as people think. And I completely agree with you. I remember when you perhaps you were strong in the beginning, but I overall think that there was a hype with the solvers. Oh, solvers will ruin the world of poker, and I think they're extremely far, especially in No Limit Hold'em. Yeah, game evolved, but the same people who were crashing before solvers are crashing after solvers. So it means that the solvers are not the problem, neither the solution.
Except for maybe Obora.
Aurora went a few steps farther, yeah, but
uh,
I think he's still a very good player. And people just say, "Oh no, he's a bot player." No, it's not true. He's a bot player. It's true. His style is a bit botish, but I also think that he's a very good player. I hope he can hear me now and he can transmit it to the bot.
I think he might hear at some point. All right, let's go ahead and move on. We're getting into our top 5, the good stuff, the juicy
Yeah,
stuff. All
yeah.
right, let's kick it off. Number 5.
Yeah, number 5. I'm not sure if you will know him as well. He's a newcomer. His name is Stambulov. I think he's especially good at the 3 max environments, and I'll explain you why I say this. Some people are very good, very, 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 very good at 6 max games where there are weaker players involved. There are more players which you will have under the gun, middle, and capsule situations. You will have game plays where there will be tighter ranges, narrower ranges, and this can benefit, for example, someone like Red Baron, for example. He's really he wins a lot from these 6 games, and he has a huge win rate at these kind of games. I think Stambulov is pretty much the opposite. He's not so good at the 6 max games. He doesn't. I think he's not. He doesn't understand so well the flow. But in my opinion, when he's playing 300 and 400 and these kind of things, he plays very well. I was playing 2017 a few weeks, and I played against him. And even if I was running pretty well and I won bunch, I think he played very well. I mean, his game was solid. He knows how to play, especially the 3 max, 4 max games. He's very. I mean, he's like an improved version, for example, from Masherdog or people like this, that they are very solid at all the spots, but he's very solid and he knows how to exploit people. So I really, 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 really like his game.
What do you think are some of the most important things for someone when you're playing like a 3 or 4-handed reg battling type game, going from that and then playing in like a full 6-handed game, usually with a weaker player? What are some of the skill sets that might differentiate someone from being successful in one and not so much in the other?
Yeah. For example, I think like resilience and like resistance to the downswings is extremely important for when you're playing 300 games, 400 games. It's more like heads up games. You need to know less about fundamentals. You need to be able to adapt to your opponents. You need to on an intuitive way understand better what your opponent is doing. When you are playing 6 max, it's more like a game of fundamentals. If you know, it's like knowing a lot of concepts and put them together, and you just need to have a very well built strategy. But you don't need to exploit so much people. You will not go through so many downswings, and your opponents will not go through so many downswings. So mental game is much less important, in my opinion. And definitely, it's more like a game where if your game is very well built, you will win much more, because it's not so much about exploiting people. It's more like getting money from the mistakes that they are making all the time. So let's say, for example, I raise middle position, my opponent 3 bets in the small land, something like king 9 suited. This is a big mistake, and or king 8 suited, and some people will still do it. So you are getting money from this kind of things, but you will not win. Like, you are not going to be interacting with the same opponents so often. So it's for me it's very different, and sometimes people who are very good at 300-400, they are not so good at 500-600, and there are different kind of players. This is why also power rankings was a bit harder than in heads up, because heads up is more who wins who, but here is more like a global. Okay, there is a 6 players game. Let's see who plays better. For example, well, now we'll go up in the ranking and we can speak more about this.
So you're saying that in the small blind against a mid-position open, you should not be 3-betting king 8 suited.
King 8 suited, not in the small and against middle.
Okay,
don't do it, guys.
That's...
You can write down.
Getting some notes in here. Okay, so
one last thing about this. For example, think about the small and an open. how often does this happen in free-handed, how often does this happen in six max. Six max is not so important, but if you are playing red games or you are playing um, against tough opponents, it becomes extremely important. So probably Stambolov plays much better small line and open than many other players, or
Okay.
blind versus blind. Yeah.
Sounds good. All right. And moving on to number 4, a player
Yeah.
I think you know fairly well.
Yeah, I know him. I think I'm number 4 right now. I've been very long time away from the tables, and still I think I'm very good at poker at six max no limit. I I've been playing six max no limit, MTTs, heads up. I think my game is a mix of everything. I learned a lot from the Baron, which I think he has been the best player of ever in six max NL. I just copied a lot of his structures. I learned a lot on how he understands the game, and I think I was the best doing this, like copying the Baron. And once you have a very solid structure, then you can learn about poker because you have so many clear concepts that then you can just spend the real time learning about how my opponent builds his ranges, learning how to sit before than how to understand your opponent better and how to understand your opponent before that he's going to act even. So these are the kind of things that studying the Baron is I think that brought me to the top, and I think that I was even higher at some point, but right now I've been out for a long time, so I'd rate myself as number 4. I was playing in 2017 for a few weeks, and I remember that I got very few action after a weeks of play. So I think they still fear me a bit,
A little
but
bit. A little
uh,
bit.
just a bit.
Yeah, I have to say, when I was looking at like your win rates and stuff, I don't know how you did this, but over the last like 4 or 5 years or whatever those results are, you won at a higher rate in six max than I won at in heads up. How is that even possible?
I think I was pretty good at this. I studied the Baron. The Baron was and the like has been the number 1, 2, and 3 at the six max pure six max games. He's extremely good, and I studied him a lot. So basically, I also played a bunch of sites, not only Poker Stars, and yeah, the games with a low rake. I've been crushing them. Yeah. The six max especially.
So you're like, yeah, pretty much. What made you better at like learning what OTB did? Because, this is probably not going to be a surprise to you, but I think many people had a strategy of, I'm going to take every hand that I've ever seen OTB play,
Yeah.
and I'm going to make notes on all of them, and then I'm going to copy him. And I know that, like, I looked at what OTB did in games I played. I know that many other people did the same thing. I know that there were other people whose entire, like, what made you so good at implementing what OTB did?
Yeah, I think it was a question of dedication. Poker comes like a lot of uh, it becomes only things about discipline, dedication, and I studied extremely hard for a few months. And I remember that I was checking his hands over and over and over and over and so many times, and I was making documents, and then I said, I don't see how he plays this, and then I used to check again his hands, and it was for like 1.5 years for 2 years. I was reviewing his hands like every single week. So once you realize, I also inferred like, okay, he's studying with Poker Snowy, so let's do my charts with Poker Snowy. Then I realized, oh, he's limping the small line. Let's limp in the small line. So it was a lot about copying him, and there were a few things that I was doing better than him in the post flop game. So, and also there was a big advantage is when you study the Baron and you're going to play him, you have studied so much that imagine you're playing against someone who studies you intensively all the time. It's hard for you that you are not studying so much anyone to beat him. So I think this is a bit what happened. Like even if he plays much better than me against most people, I played against him pretty well because I had studied him so much.
That's the tough thing, I think, when you're leading a game type. I saw a bunch of this happen to me with heads up. Once you're leading a game type, then all of a sudden everyone wants to know what you're doing because either they're going to play you or they want to learn what you're doing, or they want to, they just want to see what's going on. And so like all of a sudden, like your play gets like, broken down to a much more extreme detail than like people more in like the middle of like the top 10 or 20, then they have to worry about. You get really picked apart. One of the things that I think helped me a lot through that was, my style was very versatile. Like I
Hmm.
changed my how I played so much. Like I
Yeah.
played just radically different against different people. I had kind of like a set like go to normal strat or
Yeah.
like
You have
just
like the basis, and then you were able
yeah.
to be
But
flexible.
but I
This is the only
changed
way.
I changed, dude. I changed so much. Like in the sauce challenge back in the day, I opened like 65% on the button or something because he was just going ape shit whenever I opened. So like if you took that sample and you're like, oh man, Doug opened 65, like well
Yeah.
that wouldn't be good against me against a lot of other people, right? So, um, yeah, it's one of those things where when I look at OTB from well, let's talk about more about OTB when we get to OTB. Let's
Okay.
move on here to number three.
Yeah, number three, you are not going so far. For me, it's OTB Red Baron right
Okay,
now.
right back into it. So I'm just.
Has been very easy. Has been very easy.
Oh.
Yeah, I think most of you will say, why? How he can be number three? He's number one, and he has been number one, and he will be number one ever and forever. I think he's probably the best six max player. He has the best overall strategy build. He's the one of the most experienced guys. But the thing is that if you lead a game as Doug did, for example, at Heads Up, um, Red Baron has done it for so many years. Everyone studied him. So once you arrive to the point that people are playing against you after studying you a few years, it's almost impossible for you. It's like you're playing against you're playing football and you are one and they are 10 because they are all studying you. So it becomes impossible to maintain the lead if you are like an OTV style at 300 is very very good. Of course, he's probably one of the best players, but as long as everyone studied him and he's not as much as versatile, he's versatile and he has been very versatile, but there is an end. And of course, as well, just think about the fact that you have gotten everything. He has achieved everything, so there is not so much room for ambition, and this is one of the things I think it happens why he's no longer for me top number one at what I consider the real six max, which is playing against Rex, and if you're playing against professionals, probably he's no longer top one. Even that, his structure is amazing. Of course, we will keep studying him, and I think that he will keep, like in the mind of in people will still think that he's number one for a long time.
Uh, yeah, I also think people that aren't as in tune with what's going on online will probably still think that he's just number one because they're not up to date on like what's been happening, right? Um, but I wanted to actually ask you this question. So one thing I noticed about OTB is that sometimes he would have like sizable shifts in his strategy. Like I remember the way that he played on I want to say like low boards out of position. I think he used like at one point, and you're gonna know this stuff better than me, so I'm sure you're gonna correct me. But at one point, he had like a 30 or 40% c bet percentage, and then like over some sample, it went down to like almost like zero. Like he like almost never bet on those boards.
Yeah,
I'm sure you can take it from here, and you know what I'm saying. But the
yeah.
thing is, like, do you think that that was because he thought it was a better strategy, or do you think that was partly because he's like, people are fucking on to me. Like I gotta mix it up and like come up with some new stuff. Like why do you think he would make those
Yeah,
changes?
I think mostly he's based like he's trying strategies all the time. I like to when I spoke to my friends, I used to call him he's the Napoleon of poker. There are so many strategies in his head, and he's changing his overall strategy out of position, and he's even 0%. Why? Because the calling range has more equity than the raising range, so then he checks all the hands, and then perhaps it's just like a strategy, and then he changes again the strategy, the full strategy. So I think that his strategy is more based is a bit static, more than most people would think. It's more static than most people would think. They are based on the same principles. Perhaps, for example, um, it was a bit more. Let's say, for example, when he raised on the button, it was a bit more undeveloped in 2013. So, for example, he was checking the top pairs with a backdoor flash draw, and then in 2015 he started checking more like this kind of backdoor flash draw, but not this kind of backdoor flash draw. So the strategy became a bit more and more complex, and at all points. But the strategy was overall. was very, 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 very solid. And this is why I think that he was very good because he also um, imagine that you every day that you arrive to a hand, you have to think every single thing of the hand. So he has so many automated things that he could think in the key factors. So this is why I think also he was very good. And thinking back also about me, I think I improved a lot when you automate a lot of things in your game in six max. Then you can dedicate the time to the things that really matter. So this is
Totally. I totally, man, I couldn't agree with you more. Like, when you think about like spending time to make a decision, having all of this framework, and this is like something that we've taught Upswing for a long time, but having like the framework, like, here's my general approach, right? This is the way I'm going to look at things. This is how I'm going to do it as a total strategy. It allows you to then focus way less time on like, okay, well, what am I doing here, like what kind of sizes am I going to use, like what, and instead you can spend that time focusing on like kind of the more micro elements rather than the macro ones. You can be like, which hands most make sense here, how am I constructing these earlier ranges. And so you end up, I find, getting to spend your time much more efficiently on things that matter rather than having to try and figure out a huge problem. You can focus on small ones within the context of your strategy. I've always advocated, I'm always an execution guy over like a perfection guy. If it comes down to like, I think you should raise here on the river, let's just say 10% in a spot. Well, figure out a way to get a good 10% that's well balanced. Don't just like freak out about like what's the optimal like 2.8% hands that are bluffs or whatever.
yeah.
Like, pick a good way of doing it, try to get the better ones, but it's about efficiency. At the end of the day, I think frequency is more important than exact combo allocation. And by
Morphology.
what's up?
Morphology. Yeah, I mean, I totally agree. Like, we had a rule in on the people I used to work with. It was like everything that you can do and learn outside from the tables, you need to learn it outside from the tables. Like, you cannot think about a thing in game that you should have learned it outside from the tables. And these frameworks that you talk about, this is why Upswing is so successful, because it brings the clients a way to think about poker that help them a lot to organize and structure themselves. So they feel much more secure on their games, and it's much easier for them to focus on getting value from their time. Otherwise, you will all your life will be thinking if you have to be racing or not, ace nine off in the bottom in the cutoff. Otherwise,
What?
you will be doing this all the time.
I mean, if people are going to three bet you with king eight suited in the small blind, you might not want to open that one. All right, let's
Yeah.
let's go ahead and move on to our number two.
Yeah, I have to say that on this rankings in this power rankings, I spoke to nobody. This is what I really think, and there's zero influence. So you can blame me. Oh, Red Baron is much better, but I think number two right nowadays is Linus Love. Even if I think he's immature in the sense like he's a very new player. He has some mistakes, and of course he's still has room for improving his game. I think that he has a lot of energy, and his game is spreading. Like he crashed in the three-handed to the Bayron, or he didn't crash, but he crashed all the three-handed, including the Bayron ones. He was playing everyone, and I think it happened just because he studied a lot to the players that he's playing. He understands very well the game, but as well he knows very well the players he's playing. So his dedication is here, and even if the Barrow, for example, his dedication is here, so you cannot compete to someone who still needs to win the money. He still needs to earn the recognition from the community. He's very young, so you cannot compete with this hunger. So I think Linus Love is so good right now just because he's really, really, really hungry. And even if there are some kind of immaturities in his game and there are some mistakes and he will struggle, for example, if he's having a downswing more than other people, I think his overall approach is extremely good. So I'm not sure if he will stay there in the next 5 years or in the next 2 years, but I'm right now confident that he's better than me probably and better than Bayron.
I think that you bring up a really good point, which is the people that are hungry are going to win. You know, like one of the reasons why we constantly see the rise of new poker players towards the top of any rankings, because like the people that were already there, they get complacent. I mean, when you're at the top, or you're making a lot of money, or you've already been successful, you don't have to fight to live anymore. Like at that point, I think a lot of people just become a little lazier. They become a little more like okay with like not always having the best results, or whatever. But when you're new, like you don't have that same, you don't have that, like your problem is like, I got to try and survive here, man. Like I actually, it wasn't that many years ago where I had to go through that, like Black Friday, I went on a big downswing and I was like, all right, I'm out here just trying to survive. Right. And so the new guys like, Linus Love, or maybe Stambolov, or maybe MMA Sherdog, or whoever. I think a lot of them, like, they have a lot more drive to succeed because they haven't spent time at the top. And so they want to make sure that they make it count and they do something that people will remember and will set them up for the rest of their lives.
Yeah, I don't. I think it's important not to see it in a negative way. The thing that you became lazier or more complacent with yourself, yes, because you have won it. Is I think it's the most natural thing that once you arrive to the top, you don't have to fight for the money because you already have it, or you don't have to fight for the. You have already been here. Let's say Canu, Lotenis, for example, that have been very high players. I think that the most important thing is know when to retire, because you can do something like pump and dump, or you can do pump and leave. And I think like living in the right time is one of the toughest thing. Some people spend some time, they pump and then they start losing, they realize here, and they can just leave or they can move down on the stakes. But I think it's important to realize when your opponent plays better than you. And this at high stakes is sometimes a problem. Some people have had some ups and then down. And yeah, I think it's very natural that people start to be more less hungry. And I think also that the one of the key factors for success in financial aspects and also in your own, it's like learning when to retire. For example, you haven't been playing for a long time and you haven't been battling. Well, I'm not sure right now if you would battle again everyone, but probably there is someone who is at some point already better than you because you have been outside from the streets for a long time. And this is the things that this is
Oh, I
the
mean,
way things work.
almost certainly. There's no shot that I'm still the best heads up player. I don't even play heads up anymore.
Yeah.
I moved on to other pursuits.
The
Not to
best video
mention,
maker.
what's up?
The best video maker.
I'm trying. I'm out here trying, man. I mean, the thing about heads up that's particularly bad to stay in it though is that once you get to the top of that, there's just no one to play. It's not like in six max where you still get to play and you get to put in volume. So I would say if there's any poker type to be the best at, that's the worst. It's heads up. Because it doesn't make you that much money, man. Like I worked so hard, and like I think people would be surprised at the amount of money I made versus what might have thought I made. Cause I mean, I just still did good. I'm not complaining. But the
I'm
point,
not broke.
I'm not broke, guys. For anyone at home, it's okay. Breathe easily. But no, seriously, like I guess like I just by the time that I managed to come around, there wasn't nearly as much action going on. There wasn't nearly as much to win. So, yeah, sometimes you gotta know when to hang up the gloves and move on to some other pursuits. But let's actually talk a little bit more about Linus Love just for a second. My understanding of him, and I haven't played too much with him, but my understanding of how he plays is that he's a very non-showdown based player, has a very good red line, he's aggressive. I guess like my question is when I see him play sometimes I just feel like he's one of those guys you just have to call him down a lot, and you just have to make sure that he's not like trying to like push you around sort of, because he seems to I'm not saying he's over bluffing. I've not looked at that at all, but it feels like in a lot of spots he's one of those players that leans a bit more towards over bluffing than under bluffing.
Yeah, yeah. Especially, I think there are two main points here. One is how spectacular he makes his bluff that are not so much correlated with his frequency. Like he makes very spectacular bluffs, but it doesn't mean that he's bluffing all the time. But it looks to you that he's bluffing this hand, he will be bluffing all these hands, and it doesn't always work like that for this kind of players. Also for me. And second of all, I think that Linus Love is this kind of very mature player a few months ago or even a year ago that he improved a lot like all the leaks of his game. And this is the way Six Max works. It's more like filling your holes. You say filling, right? Yeah. Filling your holes on your game, like trying to get rid of your leaks. And then his game became more mature. He was committing very big mistakes. He's not committing anymore, and his overall game is good, but he's very good at exploiting people. So he has a lot of strengths, but he used to have a lot of weaknesses. Like as you are saying, he used to be an over bluffer. He used to have some kind of spots where he was very disequilibrated. He was not. It's about maturity. But as long as you are very hungry and and you spend a lot of time playing poker, then you improve. Like you are faster at improving in this kind of things than, for example, a more old school player. And I think he succeeded a lot at these kind of things.
Are you saying he was trying to push me around? Is that what you're saying here, Andres?
Uh,
Trying to push me around?
oh,
Doug's old, and you can just push him around.
oh no. I think he's been battling everyone for a long time. So
All right,
yeah,
let's.
he loves poker. He loves poker. The two main guys. I mean, I think that the top three guys in the world they absolutely love poker. There is no other way to become to the top. You
Cer-
need to love it.
you certainly have to love anything that you want to reach the top of. This brings us to, drum roll please, our number one top 10 power rankings no limit cash game player, and it is.
Yeah, it's No, it's True Teller. It's True Teller who I think he's the best player that one of the probably the most complete player ever in poker, but he's the best six max no limit player, and I'll say why. He might be a bit rusty. He might be a bit. He might not be right now. Like let's say today we sit to play. He might we play a 1,000 hands. He will commit more mistakes than Red Baron, Linus, probably than me, than many players. But he's so fast at adapting, at learning the games, at seeing his own mistakes. He's so much hard worker. He has a lot of heart. He is extremely good at dealing with strings, which is very important. So if we are, I remember I played a match with True Teller and Canu for EKNL. I remember True Teller didn't start playing so well. He was rusty. He was playing and he was committing some mistakes. And I remember after 6 or 7,000 hands, he was playing the best by far from us three. So he's so fast at readapting his game, at finding his own mistakes. I consider it incredibly good. He's right now focused, like, especially how he has his attention split between so many games, but still at six max whenever he plays. He has been always crushing, and also he has been extremely regular. He has never struggled his game. He has been always like that. Even if his volume is low, he has been always winning a lot. And this is why overall I think that he's overall a better player than any of us.
My
Even
experiences. Sorry, go for
yes,
it.
no, go.
I was gonna say my experiences with True Teller is that he's this really deadly combination of very precise, but also extremely aggressive and willing to do what he thinks he has to do. I can't remember the exact hand, but I just remember some pot where like he 3-bet me and I called, and it was one of the deep ante tables, so we were like 250 or 300 blinds deep, and he just like bet the flop and I called and the turn was whatever and he checked and I bet and he just like checked bomb, put me all in on the turn. And I don't exactly remember even what I had. I can't remember the hand exactly. But then I called and he just had like an open ender and he just like fucking just like put it all in there on the turn, just like piled on me, just like I don't think you can call. And like I see moves, and like I know that doesn't sound like a lot. Like okay, cool story, Doug. He like bluffed with a straight drop, but like. You don't see those moves by many people, like
Yeah,
especially in the deep games. Like you just don't see, like when you're deep, man. I will say I wish I was a better deep stack player. I think I'm really good at 100 big blinds. I think I'm fine at deeper. Like I'm not saying I'm bad, but I've never said that that's a strength of mine. But there are some people when you're deep stacked against them that it's actually kind of scary because
yeah.
you really just don't know what they're willing to do. And if True Teller has like a pile of chips and covers you and you're deep, it's a scary proposition, man.
Yeah, I remember once I was speaking. I was talking to with True Teller. I was telling to me that the for him the beauty of the game of this part is like and deep stack. It's like every situation can turn into a unique situation, and you have like 40 seconds to decide. And this is unique, and you have never been there. And I think he absolutely crushes this. Like you put him in a new game because it's a new game for him, and he absolutely crushes. And once I go backwards and I see the pods that I have been playing with him, and I see how he understood what was my strategy, how he adapted quickly, and how he plays perfect against my strategy. And even if at the moment you say, "Oh, he's doing wrong," blah blah blah, and then you see it with more perspective and you say, "Wow, he was pretty far ahead at these kind of things." At what for me is real poker. He might not be the best at fundamentals, but at real poker, if we all had the same fundamentals, is he would be number one
See,
for me.
I might counter you that I think he has good fundamentals because like he comes from a cap background, and when you come from that short stack cap background, that's like almost all just fundamentals.
That's true, but six max is just requires some time. It's like you have to spend some time studying them. So even if he's good at cap fundamentals, which is fine, and is more about fundamentals, so he's used to learn them. But he didn't. I mean, he doesn't play so many online hands in six max and all. It's normal that he has to learn so many fundamentals from so many games that let's say he's a B grade in fundamentals, but he's so A plus in real decisions that for me it's like number one at this, and this is what I consider number one at six max.
Would
Perhaps
you
today we play, but in a week he will be better.
do you would you say how long would you say True Teller's been at the top for? Like in your mind, even when OTB was like the goat, did you still think True Teller was better, or do you think that this is more of a recent thing?
I think Trueteller knew that he couldn't compete with the Baron. He also thought that I was coached by the Baron. And once I was going to play with Trueteller and the Baron, I said, "Oh, I'm not going to play your brother," or something like that. Or you want me to play you and my twin brother or something like, "No, I don't like you." But I think he couldn't go over the fundamentals. But he didn't want to study them, or he just did not find a way to study them, but they are much more accessible than how he understands well like the deep decisions. So I think that yes, like if we make a six max list, six max pure, I think Red Baron is number one by far. But if we make like a rec festing game, let's say 3 4 max, I think True Teller is better, and I think he has been better all the time. At some points of his career, he was he was I think he was a bit more rusty or less rusty in fundamentals, but overall, I think he has been extremely good. And even if he thought that he was a bit worse than the Baron just because of this or that, I think that nah, we can't compete. Different
All
leagues
right.
of minds.
So True Teller coming in at number one. Those are our top 10 rankings. But before we go, let's take a minute here. And Andres, you want to talk a little bit about the course that we got coming up that has launched today and is available? Do you want to talk about the kinds of things that you teach and maybe your experience with what you put together?
Yeah, I wanted to talk about the course. I think it's a extremely good course, and I'll let you know why. I'm living poker, so and the people I worked with, they are also living poker, so I have nothing to hide, and I have approached poker in a very practical way all my life, and I've been coaching people, so I have a very well structured framework. This is why also we when we were going to work, I said, okay, they have the same kind of framework that I think is going to be really good for learning. And the most important thing is like the quality is extremely high, the contents are very good, and I think it's by far, but very by far, the best course that has been for six max now. I'm sure you will say it in the material, and
Well,
I speak really deep and open about all the spots.
what kind of what kind of style when it comes to coaching would you say you're teaching? More of a solver based style, more of an exploitative style? What about for like online or live guys? Can you talk about like maybe like who will get a lot of benefit out of this course?
Yeah. Um, I think this course is not only thought for six max and all pure online players, it's thought for everyone. It's based on solvers, it will have a lot of information about the solvers, especially the one that you cannot exceed. For example, preflop simulations from the small and open, which is 200 gigabytes of RAM. I just did them and I'm bringing them. But I'll teach you how to work and not to work with solvers. Solvers, as I said, are not the solution. Truth Teller, Linslov, Red Baron, me are not the best solver players by far. It's more a logical game, it's more a puzzle game, and I'm going to teach you how we usually reason and how we improve in our game. The most important thing is how we study, how I usually achieve my conclusions, how what is my thinking process, how I reason normally, what are the logical paths that I follow, and this is, in my opinion, much more important than just reviewing a few hands or doing this and that. And also, it's very based on fundamentals because the key factor for uh, being successful at six max is like filling your leaks, and I'm going to help you a lot with that in the scores. But of course, it's also going to have a lot of deep stack play um, for the live games. It's also going to include anti and straddle for different games. If you're playing also different sides, I think it's going to cover pretty much all. So
Awesome. Honestly, like, I'm still like super pumped that we got you in to teach this course. Like,
yeah,
I remember when I first reached out to you, and I'm like, I hope we can get him, but like, I really don't know if we're gonna be able to. And like, when you said you wanted to work with us, like, I was super excited, man, because like, you're a player that I've always had a lot of respect for. You've had a lot of success in the highest stakes games, and yeah, I'm excited to see what people have to say about the course.
yeah, I appreciate your kind words, Doc. So let's see what you say about the course.
We'll see what they say. All right, guys, that's going to do it for us today with our top 10 list with Andres, known as Educa Poker. If you guys are interested in the course, there is a link in the description below. All right, I'll see you guys later. Andres, thanks again for joining us.
Bye.